The galactic medical fleet rarely encountered anything truly unpredictable. With thousands of species cataloged, scanned, and analyzed, biological diversity was no longer a challenge. It was a puzzle they had mastered. Gentaurus IV was the crown jewel of medical advancement. Suspended in orbit around a tranquil blue gas giant, it housed the most advanced surgical arrays, nanite regeneration bays, and AI diagnostic minds in the known galaxy. It was sterile, efficient, and bored. Then came the emergency signal. A Federation scout vessel had crashed on the barren moon of Selner's Edge. One crew member survived. Species Homo sapiens. Origin Earth. Classification Deathworlder. Injuries extensive. Extraction time under 5 minutes. Estimated fatality window under 15. Response immediate but cautious. For most medics on Gentaurus IV, it was the first time they would see a human. Stories had circulated, third-hand accounts mostly, exaggerated retellings at post-shift briefings. Most dismissed them as myths, but the label Deathworlder always carried a weight. Planets like Earth were few, planets where everything, even the atmosphere, seemed intent on killing its inhabitants. The species that survived such environments didn't just adapt, they overpowered their surroundings. As the extraction ship docked, medical staff assembled in full containment gear. The air was tight with tension. Hushed voices repeated the same words. Containment must hold. No contact with fluids. The body was wheeled in, unconscious but stable. That alone sent unease through the room. He had a metal rod lodged through his lower abdomen. A wound that should have rendered him unconscious from blood loss long before recovery. The vitals monitor lit up. Elevated pulse, irregular oxygen saturation, signs of internal hemorrhaging, but all within recoverable margins. Recovery margins for a species that shouldn't be alive after such trauma. The medics worked quickly. They began scans, injected healing nanites, applied cellular mesh to the open wound. Then the anomalies started. The first indicator came from the nanite controller. Its display flickered erratically before shutting down completely. The alien medic checked the unit twice, then replaced it. Same result. The nanites weren't integrating. They were being rejected. Not passively, violently. Thousands of microhealing units were being shredded by an immune response that identified them as hostile. Impossible, the chief xenobiologist muttered. They're medical grade, accepted by 97% of all sentient bloodstreams. The wound continued bleeding, yet it didn't spread. It didn't pool. It didn't run. Thickened. Medics leaned in. Under magnification, human platelets could be seen responding, not with gradual aggregation, but with aggressive, coordinated action. They swarmed the puncture like a military unit, forming dense bridges across torn vessels. The bleeding slowed within seconds, then stopped entirely. Not slowed, stopped. The head of trauma observed the screens with silent disbelief. Is he clotting in real time? Another medic whispered. Without aid. No stabilizers. No acceleration agents. The scans updated again. Tissue along the wound margin had already begun regrowth. Damaged cells replicated at a rate 400% faster than the galactic median. The AI marked it with a yellow flag, then red, then error. New readings came in, white blood cells moving toward the nanite debris, engulfing, dissolving, not just defense, purge protocol. The system flagged it again. Immune system response exceeds normal aggression parameters. Medical nanites neutralized. It didn't make sense. This wasn't just resistance. It was biological dominance. Another medic tried a protein stabilizer, something neutral, commonly used for dozens of species. The injection was halted. Inside the human's bloodstream, proteins folded violently, warped, and then triggered an anti-inflammatory surge. His body didn't wait to reject foreign substances. It hunted them. The medical team retreated slightly. Containment protocols were reinforced. Nothing was said aloud, but the message was clear. This wasn't standard care anymore. What unnerved the staff most wasn't the aggression. It was the precision. The body didn't attack randomly. It filtered, cataloged, evaluated, then eliminated. It showed intelligence without consciousness. A system trained over millions of years on a planet that offered no mercy. One medic reviewed ancient reports from first contact missions. He found a line buried in the files. A quote from a field surgeon who treated a wounded Terran over a century ago. "You don't save humans. You get out of their way and pray you don't get in the crossfire between them and their own cells." It was beginning to look less like hyperbole and more like a field manual. In the meantime, the human remained unconscious. His breathing was irregular but present. Occasionally, his body twitched, not spasms of trauma, but muscle contractions. Adaptive, measured, as if the body was testing its systems. The AI attempted to run predictive modeling to project recovery. The model crashed twice. When it finally ran, it produced a nonsensical result. Full autonomic stabilization within 6 hours. No external support. Full clotting. Tissue restoration initiated. Internal temperature within optimal range. Pain response suppressed. It was impossible, but it was happening. No one spoke for a long while. Monitors beeped softly. The air, sterilized and temperature controlled, felt colder than usual. A junior medic asked, hesitantly, "Should we try again?" The chief shook her head. "No, we observe. No more injections. No more stabilizers. Whatever he is, he's doing it better than we are." The consensus formed quickly. Assist only if absolutely necessary. Do not interfere. Do not disrupt the internal protocols of a Deathworlder. The body on the table didn't stir, but the medics couldn't shake the feeling that it didn't need to. It was healing itself faster than they could track. The data review started 3 hours after containment was established. The medical team convened around the observation hub, watching the screens in silence. Every measurable biological function was defying the established understanding of xenophysiology. The first point of contention was the clotting time, recorded at 6 seconds for a wound with substantial vascular damage. That was faster than the emergency response systems most hospitals used. A comparative analysis showed the standard clotting range for most galactic species was between 2 to 6 minutes. Even predatory species with high regeneration factors still required external stimulation to achieve proper coagulation. This human required none. The clotting response initiated instantly, as though the bloodstream anticipated trauma. The AI system flagged the response with a warning. Unassisted clotting velocity exceeds safe biological limits. The phrase was debated. There was no such thing as unsafe clotting speed until now. Simultaneously, white blood cell activity intensified. What started as a routine immune response evolved into full-blown mobilization. Antibodies flooded the bloodstream, targeting residual nanite fragments, protein agents, even sterilized air particles introduced through standard oxygen flow. All were tagged as invaders. One by one, the human body eliminated every external input the medics had introduced. A molecular biologist ran a scan on tissue samples taken earlier. Under magnification, cells were duplicating rapidly, but with a control level that should have required external computing. There were no errors, no mutations, no autoimmune triggers. It was regeneration governed by precise internal logic. The human body didn't just heal. It adapted, evaluated, and recalibrated based on internal environmental feedback. Another flagged anomaly, hormone regulation. Even under high trauma conditions, cortisol and adrenaline levels remained within a narrow threshold. The human was either unconscious with perfect chemical discipline or had somehow developed a subconscious override on panic states. Then came the footage. The surgical suite's internal cam had recorded the initial moments post-extraction. Slow-motion analysis revealed micro-wounds on the skin had begun sealing during transport. Without pressure dressing, without antiseptic, just skin, muscle, and blood responding with pre-programmed urgency. One alien technician said what many were thinking. It's like his cells expect to be injured. A new report uploaded from the AI archives. It was an attempt to reconstruct the human immune system virtually. The simulation began and immediately broke protocol. The immune system in the simulation treated the host body itself as neutral territory and designated everything else, tools, oxygen, lighting, scanning fields, as hostile. It formed defensive layers, prioritized threats, and initiated preemptive responses. The AI terminated the simulation with a final warning: containment breached by host simulation, terminating to preserve system integrity. Silence filled the lab. This wasn't an error. The human body didn't just fight injury. It fought intervention. The research lead, a Drazian elder with over 6 decades in xenotrauma, summarized what the others hadn't yet put into words. Their biology is built on the assumption that nothing will help them, so it made sure it didn't need help. He pulled up comparative files. Apex predators from across the galaxy. The cold-blooded Terraker, whose wounds cauterized through extreme internal temperature shifts. The swift-healing Zalari, who used biogel sacs to patch internal trauma. None of them approached human versatility. He added a final file, a lesser-known case study from a battlefield medic during the early Terran Federation conflicts. The note was blunt. Treated a human with 2 fractured legs, 1 collapsed lung. He laughed, asked for a snack, then used a piece of hull as a crutch. I stopped treating him after that. Sounded absurd. Now it sounded plausible. A second observation file was queued. This one captured the response to a foreign bacterial agent introduced through open exposure. It was harmless, an inert strain used in standard stress tests. Within 30 seconds, the human's immune system had cataloged the invader, responded with tailored antibodies, and eliminated the strain entirely. The bacterial sample was removed with such speed that the AI initially logged it as a sensor malfunction. More astonishing was what followed. The immune system retained the data. A full immunological profile was logged within 10 minutes, and the subject's cells adjusted baseline defenses accordingly. Adaptive immunity, real-time, no vaccine, no training, just exposure and immediate response. They repeated the test with another harmless variant. The same result. Less than 8 minutes total neutralization. The human's immune system wasn't just active, it was evolving per encounter. A junior researcher asked, how does this not destroy them? How do they survive their own aggression? The lead xenobiologist replied without looking up, because that's the point. Their planet tried to kill them for millions of years. Everything about their physiology was forged in response. Another medic scrolled through Earth's environmental database. Surface temperatures ranged from sub-zero to volcanic. Atmospheric pressures varied by region. Predators on land, in water, in the air. Fungal, viral, parasitic threats outnumbered mammals 5 to 1. Solar flares, tectonic shifts, seasonal floods, hurricanes. A rotating death cycle from birth to death. It wasn't just that humans survived. It was that their entire biology had adapted not to expect mercy. No one in the lab made eye contact. Every medic had their own interpretation of the data, but all agreed on one conclusion. Humans were terrifying. Not because of weapons, not because of politics, but because their bodies alone could overcome what advanced medicine couldn't replicate. Someone finally said it aloud. If this is average, what does strong look like? A message came through from the Federation Research Department. A request for a full biological assessment of the subject for Galactic Archives. The response from the chief medic was brief and final. We'll compile what we can, but understand this isn't something you can contain in a file. This is a living system, optimized by catastrophe, tempered by extinction events, and refined through suffering. No one else submitted additional commentary. There was nothing left to say. The team returned to observation. They no longer considered the subject a patient. They considered him a force of nature. 3 hours later, the human's eyes opened. No dramatic gasp, no thrashing, just calm, silent awareness. His gaze swept the sterile white ceiling, the lights above him, and then slowly settled on the glass observation barrier. Behind it, over a dozen alien specialists watched in absolute stillness. The biometric monitors pinged a shift in vitals. Pulse normalized, brain activity peaked, muscular tension decreased. Not the signs of someone waking from trauma, the signs of someone measuring the room. He didn't speak, didn't move much, but he didn't need to. The medical AI immediately attempted a neural scan to assess cognitive impact. The result returned null. Not because of interference, but because the subject had somehow shifted into a brainwave pattern too chaotic for accurate mapping. Adaptive resonance. In lay terms, his brain activity changed every few seconds, actively scrambling the AI's predictive modeling. It wasn't a glitch. It was intentional, controlled chaos that alone triggered a silent alarm. Advanced alien species could suppress emotion, but this wasn't suppression. It was filtration. Every single stress marker in the human's blood, cortisol, norepinephrine, cytokines, had already been regulated within safe range. The body had chosen which emotions to allow. The alien chief medic approached the barrier and activated the translator system. "Do you understand where you are?" The human nodded. "Do you know your condition?" Another nod. "Do you require assistance?" A pause. Then finally, his first word, "No." Simple, firm, final. His body had confirmed it already. Internal bleeding was gone. Organ damage reversed. Skeletal microfractures had fused, and even the inflammation around the rod wound had receded. Without sedation, without artificial stimulus. That rod, by the way, had been extracted during the emergency prep phase. The medical team had done it delicately, expecting a cascade of trauma. Instead, the human had stabilized within minutes, as if the injury was a temporary inconvenience. Now conscious, he moved to sit up. The team tensed. The muscles responded instantly, no sluggishness, no pain reflex. He swung his legs over the side of the table and stood. Not wobbled. Stood. "No. No, no, keep him down." One of the younger medics whispered, reaching for the remote restraint override. The chief stopped her. "He's not a threat. He's just being human." But every movement screamed threat. Not because of aggression, because of efficiency. The room was sealed. No doors would open until the chief authorized it. She activated the translator again. "You've experienced significant trauma. Standard galactic protocol requires further observation." "Your machines can't help me," the human interrupted. "I heal fine without them." That wasn't arrogance. It was certainty. His voice carried the weight of someone who had survived worse and had no interest in false comfort. Behind the glass, the team checked logs. Based on cell replication, bone regrowth, and neural stabilization, the human's projected full recovery time had dropped from 6 hours to 2. It wasn't just rapid, it was accelerating. His body had learned from the treatment attempts, absorbed the information, and created new cellular blueprints to expedite recovery. One alien technician whispered, "He's reverse engineering our medicine." From the inside, the chief leaned closer to the translator mic. "We need to understand what you are. Your biology. It shouldn't be possible." The human looked at her, gaze flat. "You're trying to treat a forest fire with a glass of water. My planet burns hotter." She didn't respond immediately. He continued, voice steady. "We're not built to be treated. We're built to endure." Behind him, the biometric system updated again. Blood volume had restored to 92% of baseline. Muscle density had increased slightly. Even in recovery, the body was reinforcing itself. The human turned his head slowly, scanning the equipment, the cameras, the medics beyond the barrier. Not a single expression shifted on his face. "Why didn't you sedate me?" he asked. The chief hesitated. "Standard sedatives triggered defensive neural resistance. Your brain rejected them." He nodded. "Expected. We evolve fast." One of the medics tapped the console, disbelief in her voice. "He's not even trying to act tough. This is normal for him." The AI attempted one final query. Upload human recovery protocol to the Galactic Medical Archive. Result: request denied. No replicable treatment protocol found. Subject physiology not stable enough to emulate. They weren't watching a recovery. They were watching adaptation in motion. The human reached for the medical band clipped to his forearm, examined it, and then tore it off without ceremony. The lead biologist whispered to no one in particular, "How many species could walk away from a wound like that?" "None in the database. Not one." The human looked down at the healing scar on his torso, already pink and clean. No swelling, no infection, just skin sealing over raw survival. "You keep records, right?" he asked. The chief nodded slowly. "Then record this. When Earth sends one of us out here, it's not because we're fragile. It's because if we weren't broken, the galaxy couldn't handle what we'd become." She blinked. "Is that a threat?" "No," he replied. "It's biology." He sat down again, not because of fatigue, but because he chose to. The AI attempted a new scan, subtle, passive, electromagnetic resonance. For one moment, the readout was clear. Then error. The body had adjusted its own bioelectric field to jam the scan. Without tech, just willpower and instinct. That final result sealed the internal file with a simple note. "Do not attempt standard protocols on human subjects. Observation only. Interference not advised." The chief closed the file. No one in the room doubted it anymore. They weren't healing a soldier. They had just witnessed a weapon. One wrapped in flesh, born from hardship, trained by evolution, and immune to pity. And it had only just woken up. The human was cleared to leave the medical containment unit 12 hours later. No escort. No need. The internal security system had logged over 50 minor threats during his stay. Automated scans, equipment fluctuations, air composition changes. He hadn't reacted to a single one, because his body had. Every subtle shift was met with instantaneous internal recalibration, without conscious effort. A body on high alert at rest. He stepped into the decontamination corridor barefoot, shirtless, still marked by faint scars that had faded faster than anyone could document. Not a single visible sign of pain. Just motion, deliberate and efficient. One technician whispered as he passed, "He shouldn't be alive." Another replied, "He's not just alive, he's accelerating." Word had spread beyond the lab. The higher councils had requested a classified report. Not on the incident, not on the injury, on the human. The summary was chillingly short. No known equivalent. No stable classification. Designate Deathworld Class Apex Adaptative. The term Deathworlder wasn't new. It referred to species from worlds too hostile for conventional civilization. Most had been extinct or quarantined. Earth had somehow thrived in spite of that. No, because of that, the human was led through a briefing hall, walls lined with personnel from a dozen species. Scientists, strategists, field operatives. Most had faced extreme environments. None had ever seen anything like what had come out of that med bay. He stopped at the platform, faced the assembly, and didn't wait for permission to speak. "You think what happened in that lab is rare. It's not." There was no microphone. His voice didn't need one. "You're used to species with limits. You treat damage like failure. We don't." One of the delegates leaned forward. "You survived an injury that should have required 6 days of ICU therapy. You walked out in 12 hours. Are all your kind like you?" He shook his head once. "I'm average. That's the part that scares you." Whispers. Data slates lit up across the room. A few analysts scrambled to run recalculations. Another voice called out, this one older. "How far does your biology go? If your systems adapt, what's the limit?" The human tilted his head. "You're looking for a ceiling. We never found one." Silence. A war tactician from the Valari Republic spoke next, his tone skeptical. "You're claiming your species is biologically optimized for war?" "No," the human replied, calm as ever. "We're optimized for survival. War just happens to be what most species can't survive." He stepped down from the platform. No fanfare, no pride. As he walked toward the exit, the lights overhead flickered. Sensors logged a minor electromagnetic anomaly. Nothing serious, but the AI flagged a note. Subject's bioelectric field is unstable, possibly intentional. Adaptive potential unknown. Outside, the diplomatic transport awaited. The human didn't board immediately. He looked up at the sky. Thin atmosphere. 3 moons. Alien sun. He didn't squint. His pupils adjusted in milliseconds. A bird-like creature swooped across the horizon. The human's head turned slightly, tracking it. Not curiosity. Target acquisition reflex. Even now, relaxed, recovering, he wasn't relaxed at all. He was ready. A message pinged on the alien command console inside the transport. Earth command. Priority encryption. Simply read. Subject authorized. Observation complete. Let them see. They need to understand what survival looks like. The chief medic stood by the docking bay watching him go. She spoke quietly to her second-in-command. What if this wasn't a test for us? What if it was for him? Her assistant frowned. A test. To see how fast he'd adapt. How far he'd go. What our limits are. You think he was watching us as much as we watched him? She nodded slowly. I think we were the specimen. Inside the hall, research logs were being updated. Entry 1. Subject rejected all forms of passive sedation. Entry 2. Subject developed immune responses in real time, eliminating threats before symptoms emerged. Entry 3. Subject displayed cellular intelligence, self-regulation, predictive adaptation, and trauma preemption. Entry 4. Subject psychological state stable under stress conditions exceeding known panic thresholds. Entry 5. Subject requires no recovery period. Biological systems restructure to optimize post-injury performance. The final entry was written not by the AI, but by the senior xenomedic. Humans do not heal. They evolve between heartbeats. That line was passed from lab to lab, from station to station. Not as scientific fact, as warning. Later that cycle, another species submitted a formal inquiry to Earth Command, asking for detailed biological records, samples, treatment protocols, anything to better understand what they'd seen. The response came back encrypted, short, and blunt. Survive your own planet first. Then we'll talk. Across the galaxy, the term Deathworlder gained new weight. It was no longer just an environmental classification. It was a status, a whispered term in medical wings and war councils alike. Deathworlder, meaning not just strong, not just fast, but fundamentally outside the equation. A species that didn't rely on intervention. A species that didn't break the rules. It rewrote them, and somewhere, in the deep dark, on a different world facing collapse, a dying commander looked at his own species wounded and whispered the words now etched into every galactic database. Pray they never send another human, because if that was average, then Earth hadn't sent their best. Not yet.